Did you know that we don't talk about one of the biggest threats from climate change? What is it, you may ask? It's that on the future of water. The media often talks about the onslaught of hurricanes and the fires in California, but what they don't discuss, what they're missing in their stories, is the effect that these weather conditions have on our water supplies and quality. Other human necessities, of course, are at risk as well due to climate change, but we can only last 3 to 4 days without water, which is what makes it the most significant. I've been researching this topic on climate change and the role that it plays on water quality and supplies in America for the past 3 months for a research paper in my English class. And the reason that I've chosen to discuss it there and here is because water is so incredibly crucial, and yet it's not very talked about, and I think that should change. So first, I will be discussing the current and projected states of water. Second, the ways in which climate change is expected to negatively impact water supplies and qualities in the US. Third, I will go into detail as to what may happen in the event that little to no effort is put in on the stress of water supplies. And finally, I'll be discussing what you can do. Water availability is already diminishing all over the world, including in the United States. According to an article in a Polish Journal of Environmental Studies, quote, researchers have concluded that half of the global surface and subsurface water has been used by humans, and due to a recent increase in agricultural and industrial activities, this demand increases day by day. So if the whole world is at risk of water scarcity, then the US definitely is too. In fact, Sarah Fecht, in her article, How Climate Change Impacts Our Lives, says, quote, an estimated 1.6 million Americans already don't have regular access to safe drinking water, end quote. She goes on to discuss a recent Harvard study that says by 2071, nearly half of the 204 basins in the US may not meet their monthly water demand in around 50 years, so by 2071. Basic economics says that as demand increases and supply decreases, the price will increase, which of course will limit the accessibility that people have of water. But how exactly is climate change threatening our water? It's the changes in precipitation that affect water supplies and quality most substantially. Climate change impacts every step of the water cycle. And Fecht says it best. She says that, quote, warmer air can hold more moisture than cool air. As a result, in a warmer world, the air will suck up more water from oceans, lakes, soil, and plants, end quote. Increases in evaporation will lead some regions to have more rain and snowfall and other regions to experience more droughts. Heavier rain will cause flooding, which will directly decrease water quality. Water picks up pollutants during floods, but not just trash. It also picks up bacteria, diseased and deceased animals, toxins that weren't properly stored, all sorts of other chemicals, and sometimes is contaminated with sewage. And all of that gets dumped into nearby bodies of water that has to be treated. And treating water is expensive, which again makes it less accessible to everyone. On the opposite end of precipitation changes are droughts, which also cause decreases in water supplies. The United States Global Change Program says, quote, short-term droughts are expected to intensify in most U.S. regions, end quote. The USGCRP continues saying that drought conditions are expected to get more drastic because as, quote, groundwater that serves as a buffer against water scarcity, end quote, is depleted. That means that when people try to make up for a loss of precipitation, they run to groundwater supplies, and that causes them to lose their safety net. So what would happen if the US took no action towards ensuring the availability of safe water? The answer is that not addressing current and upcoming issues would be devastating. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, or IPCC, says that, quote, delaying mitigation shifts burdens from present to the future, and insufficient adaptation responses to emerging impacts are already eroding the basis for sustainable development. So you can't wait, it's too late. We literally can't afford to. Because if we decide when people are suddenly dying of dehydration, oh, maybe we should fix this, it'll be too late. Furthermore, if the US does decide to quickly and efficiently confront climate change's threats to water, the, quote, actual risks to US water infrastructure may be underestimated, end quote, according to the US Climate Resilience Toolkit. Because unless something has changed since 2018, quote, climate risks to existing infrastructure systems remain unquantified, end quote. So we don't even know how dire the situation is or will be in the future. Experts have been looking at recent weather events and the responses of such to make predictions in the future as to what may or will happen. Like in South Carolina in 2015, when there were 3 days of heavy rainfall, the quote led to a failure of 49 state-regulated dams, 1 federally regulated dam, 2 sections of the levee adjacent to the Columbia Canal, and many other unregulated dams, end quote. Without action, infrastructure can crumble not only houses, but also homes. So what can you do? The most significant things that the average person can do is to spread awareness and to call for action from people in power. When spreading awareness, though, you have to be wary of how you go about it because you don't want to cause mass panic. If you do, we would probably have a similar reaction as people had to COVID. People would flock to the stores and buy all of the water, which would exacerbate the problem even more. And then water bottle companies would see the sudden demand and start pumping out more water from groundwater supplies, which would just hasten the scarcity of water. In addition, when spreading awareness, you will undoubtedly come across people who will deny the existence of climate change altogether. My response would be to pose the scenario, what if it's not a hoax? What if all these other powerful countries like Europe, China, Russia, the countries within Europe, all prepare, climate change is real, and we don't? We would be at a severe disadvantage and we would look weak in comparison if we had people dying from dehydration because we didn't prepare and we didn't take it seriously. Those in power know to at least some degree the situation with water. The Department of Defense, EPA, Department of Transportation, Department of Energy, NASA, and many other government agencies are all part of the USGCRP. They know that water is in jeopardy. What we need to do is write, call, tweet, email, I guess that's writing nowadays, because in order to get action, you have to get traction. Or, yes. So in conclusion, I discussed that the most significant threat of climate change is that on water supplies and quality. I discussed how that will happen, what will happen if we do nothing, and how we can all contribute to doing something. The true test, I think, of climate change is not necessarily, what physically we can do, but it'll be if we can overcome the laziness, selfishness, and ignorance in order to save mankind and help those in need. So next time you take a drink of water, consider what would happen if you couldn't.